contract from the sheriff's office that we can approve, but at least we'll have the other contracts from the other cities or something that we can approve, because everything is expiring on the 30th, correct?
Yep.
And we're talking about the current ones we've got now going forward, and we're not talking about a new police force or anything like that in this. We're just talking about moving forward with our new contracts instead of the 50-50 split, maybe 80-20 for all of them, maybe not, but at least hopefully we'll have contracts from all the parties on the 28th, and we can either approve them, or maybe we'll carry out the conversation that didn't happen with the superintendent and the sheriff.
If I may, I will make myself. Sorry, Mrs. Zucker, could you please mute your phone for a moment? I will say that I will make myself available whenever, if needed. I know that I don't want us to delay any longer. I think Mrs. Goodwin, I know you made that very clear as well. My concern, and 28th works, and I appreciate that way we could put all the other contracts together. What I don't want is us to wait. If the sheriff, as he stated, and I don't want to speak for him, but I've just taken on what he said in the public on the 12th, that he wants that any discussion will be in the public, but I don't know if that includes the board or not. So I want to make sure there's very clear communication from the superintendent with the board, maybe through Kathy, so there's no responses back, but that we are kept up to speed precisely on when we know what we know and whether a deal is moving forward, because I don't want to wait until the 28th and we don't have anything.
It would be nice if you did the meeting with the sheriff maybe also on the 28th, so we don't have to keep coming back and forth.
I think that's what Mrs. Brown was.
Well, if he could meet with the sheriff before and come forward, but if he can't meet with the sheriff and we do everything on the 28th, that's fine. But it would be nice if a contract was ready for us to go forward and vote on before the current one, when the current one expires on the 30th. I got a teeth cleaning at 8:30, which I'll happily give up. But, I would propose 10 a.m. on Thursday, the 28th. Anybody got a...
My request was just so that we know as we move forward that we know exactly where we are.
Well, we're going to have to notice a meeting.
Well, and we also have to make sure that our partners are available on those various times. So
yeah, we'll pencil it in. I'm going to put that.
Mr. Wait,
and the meeting will be here, right? The chambers? I'm sorry.
That's okay. And I think Mr. Robinson, go ahead.
I just want to make sure that the meeting will be here in the chambers, because there was some questions at
televised.
And televised. Okay, thank you.
Is that I think we're scheduling a meeting without a second party, so I think it makes it a little hard to confirm that, but.
Well, it sounds like what you're doing is setting a special meeting at which you will, at a minimum, consider contracts hopefully from 3 municipalities, assuming they're ready to go. Mm-hmm. Sounds like they should be. And then potentially inviting the sheriff or other parties to it.
For the 28th, is that what I heard? Which is very late.
10 a.m., but flexible.
Okay. 10 a.m., the 28th.
Oops. She needs to come back.
Okay, so that would be the proposal. If we need to make a special meeting of the board, I can do that officially, or we can take action, but I think it's premature.
The superintendent can call the special meeting.
Correct.
It sounds like there is concurrence from the board, so that should not be an issue, I suppose.
Very good, thank you. Was there any other items on your superintendent's report?
That concludes the superintendent's report.
There's more. Okay. Making progress. All right. Next up is the hearing of citizens. Give me a moment here. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak. When the time flashes yellow, 1 minute remains and you need to begin to summarize. You must stop speaking when the buzzer rings. Please note that respect for divergent viewpoints and civility will be shown at every board meeting. Whether you agree or disagree with a speaker, you should listen politely and respectfully without making any loud approval or disapproval, including clapping. I have one card, and it's Pamela Gavette.
Hi, board members, superintendent. I wanted to talk with you today about the.
I think it's on.
The mic is on.
Yep.
The approval of the Curriculum Associates iReady contract that's up for renewal. Thank you. According to the district dashboard, it appears that we might be moving in the wrong direction. In the school year 2016-2017, we had 898 third grade students that did not demonstrate proficiency in reading. And in the school year 2017-2018, 1,056 of our 3,300 third grade students did not meet the proficiency in reading. I have documentation from iReady personnel stating that it is not a diagnostic tool and it does not measure progress for students with learning disability in reading. It also does not address phonological awareness at all in grades 3 through 12. So knowing that iReady is a district-wide intervention and progress monitoring tool for reading and that it has not been effective with our lowest quartile students, I implore you to get additional data and possibly look at some alternatives rather than just approving the agreement with Curriculum Associates for iReady. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Moving on, are there any additions or corrections to the agenda? Dr. Bowden?
There are no additions or corrections. Let me just check to see if
I have a number in front of me. I have 1, 2, 3, 4.
Hold on.
Mrs. Brown,
Could we have technology connect her again? We lost the connection.
okay, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4 items listed here.
Correct, but those are not additions or corrections to the consent agenda. They are listed under new business.
Okay, forgive me. I'd received a number of items on item number 22 and wanted to pull it for comment. And I know that there's a lot of concern about iReady. I think that when we first started down the path with iReady, we didn't have a benchmark or goal on where we wanted to go, I don't think, and I think we've almost reverse engineered it, and there's been a lot of question as whether this is helping help instruction or guide instruction or not, and I think, I weigh two sides of it. I think that when you talk to teachers, it's one more new thing we're trying again, and if you don't kind of consistently keep with it, but I also think we need to make sure it's hitting the doing exactly what it is that we want it to do. And I will say that I have received a number of responses from the community, and I want them to know that it's not left on deaf ears, but I also want to make sure that we keep evaluating it to ensure that it's hitting where it needs to without pulling it off and replacing it. So I just wanted to make a comment on that since I know there was a mention. Mr. Robinson, you're on.
I also want to make a comment on this. Typically, what we do is we start a program, and then we just renew it, and it keeps going and going and going. But this program, we did a little bit differently, and I gave Dr. Kingsley, a little bit of grief about that, and I would like to say I'm sorry, but I'm glad for the end results, Dr. Kingsley. Our board held them to the feet to the fire and said, prove to us this thing works. Come up with the metrics. Come up with the decision tree. Show us that it works. We're doubting Thomas, so to speak. And she sent the two doctors, Dr. Natalie and Dr. Denise, on that goal, and they came up with a rubric. Not the kind you do this, the different colors. They came up with decision trees. They came up with evaluation tools, and they came up with criteria of what success looks like. How do we know we should continue on with this program? They went out and did surveys to teachers. They looked at predictive scores. Okay, this is what iReady says was gonna happen. Did that happen? It was very voluminous evaluation. That was where Dr. Kingsley getting me back. It's like, oh, you want something? Here, read this. Here, I just ruined your weekend. But they were able to show that this is something we should continue on. And I think that this started a foundation for us to say, let's continue on the things that are good and expand upon them, and let's minimize and get rid of the things that aren't working. And so that way it's going to focus the district over time into success and improving, always on a constant path of approval. And so, I know we gave you guys a hard time, but, actually 3 doctors, I'm sorry, Dr. Kingsley, Dr. Natalie, Dr. Denise, I mean, the work you guys did in this, in the evaluation tool, I just want to tell you guys thank you. I know I'm not the easiest person to work with. You can ask Mitzi. So thank you. You're just right in the straight line, Mitzi. I'm just seeing you right there. So.
Mrs. Goodwin.
Well, I have received several, letters and emails from parents who are concerned about it, particularly those with special learning disabilities like dyslexia. And I know there are some suspicions there that it's not doing the job it should. And some of our scores are not as high as I'd hoped they would be this far into the process. So, we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but we do have to continue to look vigilantly at this and say, is it really performing as we had expected it to? And the jury is still out a little bit for me. And it's particularly because we do have a lot of learning disability students, and I will be speaking to one Sonia Figueroa Alberts in the near future about this, because she certainly understands this whole process a lot better than I do. But I do have some concerns, and those statements and those concerns from parents do not fall on deaf ears.
Thank you. Mrs. Brown.
Yes, I want to reiterate, too, that, I've had some concerns, but I heard what staff had to say. And one of the things that, we've invested heavily in this, and we've invested heavily in training for this. And the teachers don't like us to come up with, a new tool every year. This is something shiny. Look at this one. We've got something. We're working with it. Let's tweak it and work it how we knew. But this is just one of the tools in our toolbox. We know that it doesn't work as well for students with dyslexia. I think we're looking for alternatives there. It isn't one size fits all for everyone, but it is something that's working for a lot of them. And so I think we'll continue to look for things that are going to help students, especially with dyslexia. And we are certainly looking at our lowest quartile. But, let's give this another year and go forward with it. And now that the teachers know better how to use it, let's push forward. It's in our consent agenda. That's why we're talking about it now, rather than when the item comes up for a vote, because we will be voting on it on the consent agenda. But I've heard over and over from teachers, don't throw something new at us every year. Just when we get used to something, yank it out. So, let's work with it again.
Thank you. Is there a motion for the...
I move for approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
A motion and a second. Board members, please vote. And the motion passes 4 with 1 not present. Moving on to new business.
Item number 37. I make a motion to approve the request to purchase 18 white shiny fleet vehicles.
It's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Yes, are you voting on the items, or are you calling back in? Yeah, we have 9 items of new business. Can I put you on speakerphone so we can continue to conduct business? Okay, so we're on item 37. I'm going to put you on speakerphone.
But the numbers might have changed.
Okay.
So she's gonna
Approval
have
to... All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, item 37, approval to purchase 18 white fleet vehicles.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any comments? I'll make a comment. I know that I will not be supporting this. I am still very, very, very concerned as we move down the path on the internal police department. I know that we're trying to think outside the box, but I think we are ill-prepared with the path, and I don't think that starting with fleet vehicles before we have everyone hired, I don't even necessarily believe that there's been a framework where I recognize and understand the necessity for them. So I just wanted to be on record as to let I know why I'm not supporting this. Mrs. Brown.
Just because we approve this, you're not going to just run out and buy these tomorrow. I mean, if things change in the next month or something, I mean, or are we going to be running out and buying these tomorrow?
This would authorize the purchase, and a purchase order would be out by weekend.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, board members, please voice vote, since I believe, do we have another board? Is Mrs. Zucker on the phone? Okay, so Mrs. Zucker, how do you vote?
Zucker, how do you vote? Item 37.
Did we lose her again?
Can we just move on?
Okay,
Caroline, are you there?
call the question.
Can we call the question?
Can
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you. We're looking for a vote on item 37, approval to request purchase 18 white fleet vehicles. How do you vote?
Yes.
Zucker, yes. Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Goodwin?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
No.
The chair votes no. The motion passes 3-2. Moving on to item number 38.
I move the approval of the new job description for audiologists be approved as presented.
Second?
A motion and a second. Are there any comments? Okay. Members, please
We can't vote on the machine.
Oh, that's right.
voice vote for item number 38. Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
I'm sorry about this. Mrs.
Zucker.
Goodwin?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Zucker?
Mrs. Zucker, item 38, approval of the new job description for audiologist. How do you vote?
Yes. Yes.
The only vote.
Mr. Robinson?
Ms. Zucker has my
Good,
vote.
thank you.
Yes.
The chair votes yes. The motion passes unanimously. Moving on to the next item on new business. Is there a motion?
I move that we accept the revised vocational salary schedule be approved as presented for Suncoast
Second.
Technical College.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any comments? Okay, board members, voice vote for approval of the revised vocational salary schedule. Mrs. Zucker?
Mrs. Zucker, item 39, approval of the revised vocational salary schedule. How do you vote?
Yes. Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Goodwin?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
And the chair votes aye, and the motion passes 5-0. Moving on to the next item of new business, is there a motion?
I move that we approve the Roth contributions, the District 401K plan through the Prudential and 403B plan through the various district providers effective August 1, 2008, be approved.
2018.
Second?
There's a motion and a second. Any comments, Mr. Robinson?
Yeah, I just want to thank staff. I brought this issue up to Dr. Bowden, and he supported it, sent it to Lynn Peterson, and she did a yeoman's job in making sure this got through. And this is the kind of thing that I think that we should be looking more for. We talk about recruitment and retention, and I think this falls in line with the aftercare program, doing things to improve the environment of our staff. And secretly this really costs us next to nothing, is something we should be looking at. I don't think that it's going to be entirely possible to improve morale solely by salaries alone. We don't have enough money, we don't have enough funding to be able to pay for it. And so I think that we need to be, tasking the superintendent and staff for thinking of creative, out-of-the-box things like this to improve the overall environment and benefits for the staff, especially when the cost is very minimal. So I will be supporting it, but I want to say thank you to Dr. Bowden, but especially to Ms. Peterson in making sure this happens. Thank you.
Thank you. And had it not been moved to new business, I was going to pull it for comment because during agenda review, I think it's a tremendous. I'm very grateful that you brought it to Dr. Bowden's attention, and I think I echo what you stated, that there are a lot of other elements in addition to just salaries to really enhance the work environment for our staff, and I'm very pleased that you were able to bring this forward. So, Air 5, thank you. Oh, yes, Mr. Robinson.
I just want to point
High
this
five.
out. High five. As a CPA, at the end of March, I've been maxing out my 401k here, and I'm going to roll it over into the Roth IRA. At the end of my 4-year term, whether I run or not, again, I'm going to end up with $100,000 into my, at the minimum, in my 401k plan, which would be tax-free. That if I, end up deciding to withdraw that money when I'm 65 or 70 years old, let's say it's like $200,000, $300,000, that's tax-free money when I'm retired that I'm going to be able to take that money down and not have to give Uncle Sam a dime. So I'm just letting people know, if they're thinking about retirement, the Roth is a very interesting tool to use. And so as a CPA, I'm just putting it out there to look at it, not just look at the 401k. I know you don't get the tax deduction now, but the benefit later on is immeasurable.
Thank you. Any other comments? Members vote on the motion before us. It'll be a voice vote. So, Mrs. Zucker.
Ms. Zucker, item 40, approval of the addition of Roth contributions to the School Board of Sarasota County, Florida 401k plan through Prudential and 403b plan through various providers effective August 1, 2018. How do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown.
Yes.
Mrs. Goodwin.
Yes.
Mr. Robinson.
Yes.
The chair votes aye, and the motion passes unanimously. Moving to the next motion, do I have a motion? Next motion, item on new business.
Item number 41, approval to purchase materials or services through piggyback contracting from vendors under a contract with a federal, state, or municipal government that utilized a competitive process or a cooperative with a lead agency.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Mr. Robinson?
Yeah, I'm going back again to what Ms. Ziegler says. I would like to see a plan on how we're doing these things and how we're rolling out this internal security, not doing this piecemeal. So I won't be supporting this. I really would like to have some more robust discussion about the internal police force.
Any additional comments? Thank you. This will be a voice vote. Mrs. Zucker?
Zucker, item 41, approval to purchase materials or services through piggyback contracting from vendors under contract with federal, state, or municipal government that utilize the competitive process or a cooperative with lead agency. How do you vote?
Aye. I think it's a really good, gives us a lot of leeway. It saves us money.
Thank you.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's fine. Mrs. Brown, yes, I got you. Mrs. Goodwin?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
No.
And the chair votes no. It's 3-2. Item number 42. I have a motion.
Item 42, the approval to increase the purchasing limit for bid number 17-0261 for safety and security systems, imprint systems, supplemental parts, and services as presented.
I second it.
Motion and a second. Any comments? Mrs. Brown?
This is for the
Is your microphone on?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
This is for equipping our schools. Is this not putting safety?
Correct. This is the capital portion of our safety and security plan.
I will support that.
I appreciate the clarification. Thank you. So, and any other comments? And we'll do a voice vote. Mrs. Zucker, how do you vote?
Zucker, item 42, approval to increase the purchasing limit for bid number 17-0261 for safety and security systems. How do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Mrs. Brown?
Aye.
Mrs. Goodwin?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, and the motion passes unanimously, 5-0. Is there a motion for item number 43?
Correct.
Sorry? Oh, is there a motion for item number 43?
I move for approval of the new exempt salary schedule for school resource officers as presented.
Second.
A motion and a second. Are there any comments? Mrs. Brown, do you have a comment?
Yeah, well, I did, seeing how things are moving forward, I would like to somewhat reiterate what Mr. Robinson had said, and perhaps when we have this meeting on the 28th, we all hear a presentation because some of us saw it. I mean, hearing it and seeing it is two different things. And for the public to be able to hear it and see it, I know that we've gone out to schools and to different organizations and telling them about the security plan. But maybe we could add that to the agenda that we have on the 28th, so we will hear about it and we will answer more questions. I mean, we will answer all questions if there are more questions that come up. But doesn't have to do with this item particularly, but it
Thank you.
has to do with the ones before it too.
I have a question on this. I know that there was a question about classified, the bargaining units for the police, the internal police department, and bargaining and negotiating salaries in good faith under the current contract. I just wanted some clarity if this is part of that. Is this outside of that scope? I don't want to. I don't know. That's to Dr. Bowden or to Mr. Hardy.
Certainly, police officers are.
Yeah.
Police officers can be part of a bargaining unit. They are not specifically included in our classified bargaining unit as we haven't had them. And the SCTA has affirmed that they do not believe they fall within the classified bargaining unit, and I would agree with that because they are a separate kind of entity. So certainly the board can create those positions and it needs to benchmark an initial salary, but once those people are hired, they will certainly have an opportunity to form a bargaining unit and select, if they so choose, a certified bargaining agent, so that law enforcement generally, not the chief perhaps, but law enforcement generally, can be its own bargaining unit, and the school board will have an obligation to bargain terms and conditions of employment once that happens.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Robinson?
Yeah, I have concerns because I've been told by people that law enforcement officers and correctional officers have a Bill of Rights. And it's a statutory scheme. And in that statutory scheme of the Law Enforcement Correctional Officers Bill of Rights, it outlines certain processes and policies that need to be in effect before you hire a law enforcement officer. And we haven't come up and approved any of those policies. And so I don't feel comfortable doing this, given that there's a statute and requirements. So until I feel that we're in compliance with the relevant statutes, and I really can't, support something that's going to cause us to be in violation of statute. So I won't be supporting this.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, all those, Mrs. Zucker, voice vote.
Zucker, item 43, approval of the new exempt salary schedule for school resource officers. How do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Goodwin?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
No.
The chair votes no.
I would like to request
Motion.
that the attorney, our attorney, look into the item that Mr. Robinson brought up and perhaps give us some information back on that before our 28th meeting or before you leave town.
I will do my best.
Thank you. So just to reiterate, the item passed 3-2. Item number 45.
44.
44.
I'm sorry.
44. Approval of the instructional classified personnel report as presented.
Do I have a second?
Shirley.
Oh, a second.
A motion and a second. Any comments? Mr. Robinson?
I read about this in the paper, but I could not find the chief of police on this report. Did I not see it, or is it here or not here?
His background is not complete, and he's not on the personnel transaction report.
All right, thank you.
Are we voting on 44?
Yes, Mrs. Zucker, please let me know how you.
Yes, number 44, approval of the instructional classified personnel report. How do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown.
Yes.
Goodwin, Mrs. Goodwin, excuse me.
Yes.
Mr. Robinson.
Yes.
And the chair votes aye, and the motion passes unanimously, 5-0. Moving on to final item on our new business is 45. Do I have a motion?
This is an item that I've placed on the agenda for the board to consider. And this has to do with hiring an attorney for the board and potentially Dr. Bowden, should he be named as a defendant in litigation that has certainly been threatened by Dr. Jimenez Ruiz. And given that that suit could be filed in the interim before what I thought was at least your next scheduled board meeting in mid-July, I brought this forward to be covered.
I make a motion that we authorize the board chair to sign an agreement retaining the law firm of Greenberg Trog.
Torg.
What?
Yeah.
Torg?
Mm-hmm.
Torg. As presented to represent the school board, and then have the school board reimburse Dr. Bowden and Dr. Shelley of the reasonable expenses for them to retain their own lawyers.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
A motion, a second. Any comments, Mr. Robinson?
Yeah, I just think that it's important, that each of them have their own lawyers just in case they have different defense strategies. I know Dr. Shelley is, concerned, and I could understand her concern, and I don't have a problem with. I voted to approve Dr. Bowden having his own attorney when this issue came up before, and I felt very strongly about Dr. Shelley having her attorney. She ended up not needing one, but I think if it's actually going to go into a lawsuit, then I think that it's only right that Dr. Shelley be afforded the opportunity to engage her own attorney.
Thank you. Mrs. Brown.
We may never need this because perhaps a lawsuit won't be filed. This is something that has
Are
gone.
we voting, John?
Not yet.
Momentarily.
We've gone through this a few times already, and we don't know if a lawsuit's going to be filed, but we won't be meeting again until middle of July, and a lawsuit might be filed in that interim, so we might have to have somebody here. I think it's important to I think there was some misinformation out last time that it was $30,000 to $50,000 that we spent, and I think the actual expenditure was like $7,300. So we're not looking at $50,000 or $100,000 or $200,000 here, and we may never expend a penny. It's only if a lawsuit is filed, and there is not one yet. Is that accurate?
That is correct. There is no lawsuit. There may never be a lawsuit, although one has certainly been threatened. If there is a lawsuit, we don't know who the defendants will be. But if it is filed in the interim, there is responses that need to be made in a timely fashion. So I believed, given that you had until July 17th, till your next board meeting, it was prudent to have someone ready to go. But you are correct, Mrs. Brown. It's possible that this will all be moot.
How long will what are the statute limitations on filing a suit?
Well, for a Title VII lawsuit, once you get your notice of rights from the EEOC, suit must be filed within 90 days.
And then we have 20 days to respond.
20 days.
Correct.
Yeah, yes, generally speaking. Some deadlines certainly can be extended, but I'm just trying to be proactive. As I understand the motion, the board is hiring the Greenberg Traurig law firm to represent it, should that be necessary, and is authorizing potential defendants, Dr. Bowden and or Dr. Shelley, is allowing for reimbursement of separate counsel, so potentially 3 separate lawyers. That is how I understand the motion.
Mrs. Brown had her name on, so I'll comment while I wait for a moment. So Two things. This correct. I appreciate Mr. Hardy bringing this forward just as a proactive way so that we're not scrambling, and so this gives the board an opportunity to make what they feel is the right decision. I think that, I know that there's been discussion on whether to separate or not, and this is all very contingent. I mean, this is very hypothetical, I think is the right word to use. And I want to make sure, as fiduciaries of this district, you want to do this as cost-effective but efficient at the same time. And so I grapple with the component of 3 separate attorneys at the expense of taxpayers. I know that the statute does indicate that we are required to cover legal expenses.
Well, for Dr. Bowden, under his contract, you have explicitly acknowledged that you will engage counsel on his behalf. That could be separate counsel if the board determines that's what's required. I believe ethically, based on what we know now, an individual attorney could represent all the potential defendants, but doesn't have to be that way. With regard to other employees, the law is that the board has the authority to permit reimbursement for employees' legal expenses when they are charged with criminal or civil actions, and this would be a civil action, that arise in the course and scope of their employment. The law further states that upon successful defense of such a case, the board shall reimburse. So, in essence, up front, you are authorized to do that. You are required to do it after the fact if the employee prevails.
Mrs. Brown, you had were you with your marker on? Okay. I am concerned, and my question for clarification is, because I know federal lawsuits can be very long, and so I just want to be very, very cognizant of the total potential expenditure before going down this road. So this motion would authorize, in the event we're served with a lawsuit, to authorize the chair to sign an agreement with the Greenberg-Traurig as presented and reimburse the potential defendants of...
That is how I understand the motion. My recommendation to you is that we currently employ the Greenberg-Traurig firm now. They won't be expending money unless a suit is filed, but I want them on board. Mm-hmm. Right, to be ready. And then the motion says that you authorize the reimbursement of obviously reasonable fees for each of the 2 individuals who are potential, and it may never come to fruition, but potential defendants. So yes, if a lawsuit is filed against the school board and the 2 individuals, you would be hiring one law firm for the board and authorizing the reimbursement for the 2 individuals to hire their own attorneys.
Follow-up. If the individuals, it's outside of listing them separately right now, if the individuals wanted, so if we authorized it as presented, as the motion says right here, and following in a couple time ways that the respective defendants are listed as potentially as indicated, and wanted to have their own representation, could we not make that decision at a separate time?
Well, no lawsuit has been filed, so all of this is somewhat in the planning stage.
Right, I know. I just want to make sure we don't lock ourselves into one. I just want clarity there. That's
so you don't have to do any of this right now.
Right.
But my concern is that if a lawsuit's filed, I don't want to have to come back here specially.
I understand that part. I just wanted to clarify as to being amended later on, where the board could vote to identify separate legal counsel and reimbursement for the party.
If we're authorizing reimbursement, those individuals would have the right to go hire whomever they chose, and you would be reimbursing reasonable expenses.
Okay.
On behalf of those people.
Okay, Mr. Robinson.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I piggyback on what Mr. Hardy said. Is I would feel. I don't think that it's right if Dr. Bowden or Dr. Shelley decided to go out and get their own attorney because they, felt that, Dr. Shelley's probably going to say, I want a motion to dismiss. I'm not, I really wasn't involved. And she only has so many days, and we're not going to meet. And and putting her behind the 8 ball isn't fair to her, and then make her shell out money out of her own pocket, and then she's going to prevail like we all suspect, and then we have to reimburse her. I don't think that we should, force that upon our employees. So that's why I made the motion the way I made it.
Okay. I just want to make sure I'm clear. So, and I apologize, Mr. Robinson, can you please restate the motion just because those words do matter?
Okay. I authorize that the school board authorize the board chair to sign an agreement retaining the law firm of Greenberg Trog. Greenberg et al.
got it.
Greenberg et al. There's a call?
Keep going.
Really? Is it still so?
Let's keep going.
As presented to represent the school board, and that we reimburse Dr. Bowden and Dr. Shelley reasonable fees for them to have their own attorneys.
Okay, so there's a motion.
And Brown seconded.
On the floor, any other comments? Since it's voice vote, Mrs. Zucker.
Mrs. Zucker has dropped off the phone.
Mrs. Brown.
I'm sorry, you changed the one that was up there, or what?
Yes.
Yes.
I've been distracted. I have to go to the bathroom. What did you change it to?
I changed it so that Greenberg et al.
Represents the board?
Represents the board, and that if Dr. Bowden and Dr. Shelley wish to go get their own attorney, we will reimburse them reasonable
I thought that's
legal
what it was.
expenses.
Okay, yes.
Okay.
That was a vote, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Goodwin.
Yes.
I'm a little messed up here. Mr. Robinson.
Oh, my God.
Mr. Robinson.
I'm sorry. That's...
Mr. Robinson.
Yes, ma'am.
She'd already gone.
Yes. We have them in the back. Okay. Yes.
I am very concerned. I know this is hypothetical. I will be approving it. Reasonable is a challenge, and I am concerned, but I will be voting yes. So the motion passes with one abstention. No, with one absence. Sorry, excuse me. Long day. Okay. That concludes, I believe, new business. Mrs. Brown, are there any comments? I'm just kidding. Lighten the mood a little bit. So,
Oh, no, go wash your hands.
No comments. You've made enough.
I look forward to keeping updated on the discussion that took place during the superintendent's report. So from an announcement standpoint, we'll keep that posted. The next policy review workshop session is July 17th, 2018 at 12:30. The next regularly scheduled board meeting is July 17th at 3 p.m. If there are no other comments, we are adjourned.
So what kind of